Before the breath of humanity ever stirred the dust of earth, before the very stars took their destined places in the heavens, there existed a terrifying silence. A silence not of peace, but of an immense, suffocating void, pregnant with monstrous forms and untold energies. This was the primordial ocean, a boundless expanse of chaotic waters where light dared not tread. Within its murky, unfathomable depths lurked the Ancient Ones, beings of unimaginable power whose very existence was a threat to what little order would eventually come to be. The earliest records, etched into clay tablets from long-lost cities, whispers from texts like the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, and the fragmented Sumerian myths, speak of this dreadful genesis. From the ceaseless commingling of Apsu, the sweetwater abyss, and Tiamat, the saltwater chaos, sprang forth the first entities. These were not benevolent creators, but primordial titans, Lamu and Lahamu, followed by the colossal Anshar, heaven's totality, and Kishar, earth's totality. From their union, Anu, the Skyfather, emerged, a figure of immense but often distant authority. As generations of deities multiplied in the cosmic void, their burgeoning existence began to stir the ancient, slumbering horror of Apsu. Their boisterous energies, their very vibrancy, became an intolerable affront to his primordial stillness. Apsu, counseled by his dark vizier Mumu, decreed a terrible solution, the annihilation of his own divine progeny. But a cunning and brilliant force, Ea, known to the Sumerians as Enki, the god of wisdom, magic, and the sweet waters, perceived the impending doom. In a chilling act of preemptive violence, Ea wove a potent sleep spell over Apsu, rendering him utterly helpless, then extinguished his ancient light, establishing his domain upon the conquered freshwaters. This act, however, awoke an even greater, more primal terror. Tiamat, the vast, monstrous embodiment of chaos, recoiled in a fury that shook the very foundations of existence. Her rage, fueled by Apsu's demise and the insidious urgings of her own monstrous creations, swelled into an army of unspeakable horrors, venomous serpents, fearsome dragons, and grotesque scorpion men born of her own dark essence. This was not merely a war, it was the reassertion of primal chaos against any semblance of order. The younger gods, for all their growing power, quaked in terror, paralyzed by the sheer unbridled malice of Tiamat. None dared to face her until Marduk, the mighty son of Ea, stepped forward. His demand was stark, supreme authority over the pantheon should he succeed. In their desperation, the trembling gods consented. The ensuing cosmic battle was a cataclysm of unimaginable scale. Marduk, armed with divine winds and a mighty bow, confronted Tiamat. He ensnared her, forced a hurricane down her throat, and ultimately, with a single arrow, pierced her primordial heart, ending her reign of terror. Yet her death was not the end of her influence. Marduk then performed a grotesque act of cosmic surgery, splitting Tiamat's colossal corpse in two. From one half, he forged the vast, overarching heavens. From the other, the solid, enduring earth. He then bound the stars and planets into their courses, weaving a semblance of order from the remnants of chaos. This dark, foundational act solidified Marduk's chilling reign as the supreme deity, establishing the very fabric of the cosmos from the vanquished remains of a primordial horror. Within this newly, often brutally ordered cosmos, the Anunnaki rose to power, carving out their domains and establishing a rigid, unforgiving hierarchy. They were the great gods of both heaven and earth, their names echoing through ancient prayers and dread rituals. Their decisions were absolute, shaping the very destiny of existence, often with little regard for lesser beings. Their stories, etched onto countless clay tablets, reveal a pantheon not always benevolent, but powerful, demanding, and at times terrifying. Dominating this grim pantheon were figures whose names still resonate with an ancient, chilling power: Anu, or An in Sumerian, the distant, often aloof supreme sky god whose authority was ultimate but rarely directly exercised. He was the silent, watchful figurehead observing from his celestial throne in Uruk, Enlil meaning Lord Wind, the tempestuous god of air, storms, and the very breath of life. Enlil was a fearsome deity, known for his destructive decrees and his often harsh judgments. He held the tablets of destiny, wielding immense power over fate itself from his sacred city of Nippur. Enki, or Ea in Akkadian meaning Lord of the Abzu, the cunning god of wisdom, fresh waters, the mysterious Abzu beneath the earth, magic, and craftsmanship. While sometimes portrayed as a trickster, Enki possessed a dark, calculating intellect and a vast knowledge of ancient secrets. His domain was Eridu, a city built upon the very waters of the Abzu, Ninhursag or Nintu Ninmah, the formidable mother goddess associated with creation and the shaping of life, often a stern and unyielding figure in the divine council. The Anunnaki established a strict divine bureaucracy mirroring the hierarchical and often oppressive societies that would later emerge on Earth. Their decrees were absolute, their temples on Earth serving not just as places of worship, but as grim centers of power and control where mortals were expected to serve their every whim. Yet, even among the gods, there existed a caste condemned to ceaseless toil. These were the Igigi, a lesser pantheon often referred to as the younger gods or celestial spirits. Their existence was not one of divine leisure, but of unending, back-breaking labor, all for the benefit of the supreme Anunnaki. Their plight is most vividly and tragically recounted in the Atrahasis epic, a chilling Babylonian poem that pulls back the veil on the darker aspects of divine existence. The Igigi's primary function was to be the literal muscle of the divine realm. Their duties were arduous, unending, and utterly draining, even for beings of divine essence. Mining the earth's depths, they delved into the very bowels of the earth, extracting precious minerals, perhaps the very gold or other substances the Anunnaki required for their grand projects or unknown cosmic purposes. Carving the earth's face, they were forced to construct and maintain the vast, intricate network of irrigation canals, arteries of life for Mesopotamia's fertile crescent. These immense earthworks, vital for sustaining both divine and later mortal existence, were built on the sweat and exhaustion of the Igigi. Cultivating divine sustenance, they tilled the fields and managed the harvests, ensuring that a constant supply of food and resources was available for the Anunnaki, who, unlike the Igigi, reveled in luxury and leisure. The Atrahasis epic paints a stark, unsettling picture of their plight. For 40 years they bore the toil, day and night they bore it. They groaned and cursed, the pits they dug, the channels they cleared. The great gods piled up the mountain of the gods, but the Igigi groaned under the load. This ceaseless, relentless servitude, this brutal subjugation of divine beings to physical labor, bred a deep, simmering resentment. It was a pressure cooker of exhaustion and despair, building inexorably towards a breaking point that would shake the very foundations of the divine order and ultimately unleash an unforeseen and terrifying solution. The relentless toil weighed heavily upon the Igigi. For what seemed like endless cycles, they had labored under the oppressive command of the Anunnaki, their divine strength slowly eroding under the ceaseless demands of excavation, canal digging, and cultivation. The Atrahasis epic grimly details their suffering. The Igigi groaned over the pits, they groaned, they wept, they sighed. Their divine essence was being consumed by drudgery, and the deep, simmering resentment that had brewed for ages was finally reaching a terrifying boiling point. The breaking point arrived with a sudden violent fury that shattered the very peace of the divine realms. The Igigi, driven to desperation by their unbearable burden, dropped their tools. Their synchronized action was not merely a refusal to work, but an overt act of rebellion. They did not just stop, they marched. In a chilling display of unified defiance, they converged upon the dwelling of Enlil, the powerful god of storms and decrees, often depicted as the primary orchestrator of their forced labor. The text states they surrounded his house, setting fire to their tools, a symbolic act of renunciation and aggressive protest. This was an unprecedented act of insubordination, a direct challenge to the supreme authority of the Anunnaki. The sudden uprising of the Igigi sent shockwaves through the Anunnaki pantheon. Such a rebellion was unthinkable, a rupture in the cosmic order that threatened the very stability of their divine existence. The great gods, led by Anu, the distant sky father, Enlil, whose authority was directly challenged, and Enki, the wise and cunning god of the Abzu, hastily convened a divine assembly. This was no mere council. It was a crisis meeting, held in an atmosphere thick with fear and uncertainty. The gravity of the situation was immense. How could they maintain their power and their lifestyle if the very beings performing their vital tasks refused to obey? After much debate and fearful deliberation, a chilling yet pragmatic solution was proposed. It was Enki, ever the resourceful and often morally ambiguous deity, who put forth the most unsettling proposition: to create a new, subservient race. A race specifically engineered to shoulder the burden of labor, freeing the gods from their tiresome duties. This idea was not born of compassion, but of cold, strategic necessity. They needed workers, and the Igigi had proven unreliable. A new, more controllable workforce was the answer. The creation process itself, as described in texts like the Atrahasis epic, was macabre. To imbue this new race with a spark of the divine, a sacrifice was deemed necessary. A god, We-Ilu, whose name may mean slaughterer or sacrifice, and whose identity varies slightly across different traditions, was chosen for this grim purpose. We-Ilu was slain, and his flesh and blood were mixed with clay from the Abzu. This mingling of divine essence and earthly material was not merely symbolic, it was the very method by which the new beings, Lulu, often translated as primitive man, would be formed. Under the guidance of Ninhursag, or Nintu, the great mother goddess and divine midwife, 14 birth goddesses were instrumental in shaping this mixture. They molded the clay-blood mixture into living forms, breathing a partial divine spirit into these new vessels. Thus, humankind was brought into existence. Their primary, horrifying purpose was clear from their very inception: to serve the gods. They were to perform the arduous tasks that the Igigi had rebelled against, to dig the canals, cultivate the fields, and provide sustenance through their ceaseless labor and by offering sacrifices to the pantheon. Humanity was not created for love or companionship, but as a replacement workforce, a servile race designed to alleviate the divine burden and ensure the continued comfort of the Anunnaki. Their very existence was rooted in divine rebellion and bloodshed. The legacy of these ancient myths reverberates through history. Elements, like the Great Flood, found their way into later traditions, hinting at deep shared anxieties. Modern archaeological discoveries continue to unearth these chilling accounts, revealing a world where divine power was absolute, and humanity's very existence was a brutal solution to a divine problem. And as we reflect on these ancient whispers from the clay tablets, an unsettling question lingers: are we truly free, or do we still, in some unseen way, carry the silent, perpetual burden of a forgotten divine debt?